In the realm of survival horror, few games have managed to leave as lasting an impression as Outlast. Set in the eerie confines of Mount Massive Asylum, the game leverages atmosphere, psychological tension, and a pretty engaging story to create a deeply immersive and terrifying journey. When compared to other horror titles, Outlast stands out not just for how it scares the players, but for how it keeps that fear sustained without relying on traditional combat mechanics or even solely on jump scares. Now, I'm going to be using that word a lot because sustainment is something that this game in particular excels in, and I hope you see by the end of this video why that's important. I think one of Outlast's defining features is its commitment to vulnerability. Now, I really like survival horror as a genre, but a lot of the games, players are armed and a lot of the time they are capable of fighting back, whereas Outlast removes that safety net entirely. There is no combat at all. It forces you instead to hide in lockers, under beds, or just at times run blindly through pitch black hallways. It creates a different kind of horror, which is one that is rooted in pure survival and helplessness. The design choice puts an emphasis not on how to defeat the terrifying enemies, but instead on how to escape, how to run away. You never feel like some heroic super soldier capable of shooting down the threat or beating it into submission. You're just a normal person trapped in this area with an overwhelming threat, and you only have one option, which is to run and escape. Now, this is just an expansion to the Amnesia Dark Descent's version of horror, which is another game that emphasises running and hiding over confrontation. However, Outlast intensifies the experience with its found footage aesthetic and its graphical fidelity. This game looks so good for a title that was released back in 2013. The game's visuals are gritty and realistic, immersing players in the decrepit, blood-stained hallways of Mount Massive Asylum. There were a lot of times where the filth in the corridors really reminded me of some of the later stages of Silent Hill 2, where there's just muck all over the walls. Complementing the environments and the textures is the lighting, which plays a really crucial role in building tension. The game often relies on pitch black environments, illuminated only by the night vision of the protagonist's camcorder. This mechanic not only adds a layer of vulnerability, because that's the only item you can equip, but also heightens the fear of the unknown. You know where you have to walk to, but it's just about shrouded in darkness, so you never really know what you're walking into. The subtle details that this map is filled with, the flickering lights, and the actual design of the asylum's interiors, this kind of maze-like structure, contribute to this constant sense of pure dread. I think the art design overall creates a hauntingly believable setting that is integral to Outlast's effect on the player. The night vision, found footage, Blair Witch-esque component I mentioned earlier in particular is an actual stroke of genius. It forces players to rely purely on this camcorder with limited battery life to be able to see, introducing a constant need to manage resources and increasing the tension in every moment of exploration. Now, obviously item management isn't exactly new to survival horror, but in a lot of other games, the item management is normally in aid of weaponry, it's ammo and upgrade materials. There isn't such a sense of desperation in it like there is in Outlast. I mean, when I went through the Dead Space remake, I really noticed just how impactful having weapons is on the overall horror experience. Learning that the enemy is a tangible threat and you can defend yourself, and you start to learn how many shots can actually take down a necromorph, it really brings down the tension. The game turns from a horror into a shooter with some horror elements, and the resource management thrown in is quite fun because, obviously it's fun to upgrade your weapons and your suit. But like I said, in Outlast, there is no combat element, you just have to run away. The fear of the game is never diluted by the empowerment of combat. It only grows as the player uncovers more about the asylum's gruesome secrets, and you encounter more and more fucked up things and realise just how helpless you really are.
Don't pass that on me. There's still a lot for you to absorb.
Narratively, Outlast weaves a pretty good story if you decide to engage with it, because the bulk of it is made up with documents you can read and environmental clues. Outlast doesn't spoon-feed the story. Instead, it trusts the player to piece together the horrors through exploration, making the discovery of truth part of the horror. Seeing how in Outlast you play as a freelance journalist, actually learning the story of this madhouse as you go, I felt really helped me feel like I was actually in the place of the main character. The twisted experiments, the cryptic notes, and the truly grotesque visuals evoke a sense of dread that sticks long after the game is over. The game's pacing is also pristine. Outlast manages to balance moments of calm, like you know you're in a terrible situation, but it's relative calm, with these bursts of panic, often leading players into a false sense of security before unleashing pure chaos. This ebb and flow is way more effective than the constant jump scares found in other horror games, as it builds a rhythm that keeps the players engaged and constantly uneasy, which is in my opinion the best way to do horror. Again, it all goes back to that sustainment. In my opinion, jump scares are such an easy and cheap tactic that I feel the general audience could smell when one's coming a mile away, which, just like in-game weaponry, can take away from the sustainment of the horror. This pacing, combined with the linear progression, make the game feel like it never drags and you are constantly moving forward. Now, as I'm about to play Outlast 2 for the first time, I know, very late to the party, I'm genuinely excited and maybe even a little bit nervous. The first game left such a strong impression on me that I can't help but wonder how the sequel will raise the stakes. I am really curious to see how Red Barrels expands on what made the original so memorable. Will the helplessness feel the same now that I'm in a more open area? Will the story go even deeper into the disturbing world that they built up with the story of the original? I mean, who knows, it might even be good enough for me to make a follow-up video. I think overall, Outlast is a absolute masterclass in horror gaming. Its expansion on the Amnesia-esque gameplay loop, I think, has been the inspiration for some of the best horrors in recent years. Its bare bones, no combat vulnerability, and lengthy moments of both narrative and literal darkness is such a wonderful way for a horror to be played, because it proves that the scariest moments when you're playing a game often come not from fighting monsters, but from running away from them and praying that they never find you. Most horror games today blur the line between action and suspense, and I understand, I do get it, you want to make it as appealing to as many people as possible, but when you go back and play Outlast, you'll notice that it feels refreshingly focused on just delivering an excellent horror. I think the developers were incredibly confident and quite brave to release a game like this. It doesn't try to have a little bit of everything, it just tries to terrify you, and it does it incredibly well, and I think that's why it's still regarded as one of the best even today, 12 years after release. It's definitely not a game for the faint of heart, but I feel like if you're a horror fan that feels that most titles coming out today are a bit formulaic, then you can go back to this game and it will remind you what horror is supposed to feel like. Overwhelming, unpredictable, and most importantly, sustained.